Hi everyone, how are you doing? My name is Zac Sgro and I'm one of the pastors here at Neighborhood Church. And by now, for most of you that have been following us through this pandemic, you know that we have moved to 5 separate house churches that are going to be meeting together on a week-to-week basis, taking 1 week off a month. And so our Sunday morning gatherings are going to look a little bit different, as you learned first last week when Joey preached Living on a Prayer. And so as our Sunday mornings are going to look slightly different, I want to let you guys all know first and foremost that if you're looking to get connected with Neighborhood Church at a deeper level, if you are looking to even potentially join one of our house churches, please take time to fill out our online Connect card and we will do our best to get with you quickly thereafter we receive that in. And so as Neighborhood Church ventures into this next phase of our journey together, all of our house churches will collectively be going through the same material on Sunday mornings, beginning with Pete Scazzero's Emotionally Healthy Spirituality. And then that will take us into the Advent season where we'll be doing something special and different for the 5 different house churches. So today will serve as an introduction to that material. And then each week hereafter, we will be following along with the Emotionally Healthy Spirituality book and workbook, bringing something for all of you on Sunday mornings that relate to what we're going through with the rest of the house churches on a week-to-week basis. So for today, we are going to take a brief look at the character of Judas as an introduction to the Emotionally Healthy Spirituality course. And as many of you might be thinking, great, Judas, why on earth would we be looking at the life of the one who betrayed Jesus? Couldn't you have picked somebody else? Couldn't you have maybe picked one of the other 11 disciples who didn't betray Jesus? And I could have. But I wanted to use Judas and use his life specifically to metaphorically illustrate a great truth for all of us today that would consider ourselves Christians or that would consider ourselves churchgoers or maybe now church watchers. And the truth is this: like Judas, we can appear to be close to Jesus or even good Christians and yet be so far from him. I'm going to say it again. Like Judas, we can appear to be close to Jesus or good Christians, yet in actuality be far from him. Judas, as most of you know, betrayed Jesus over to the Jewish authorities for 30 pieces of silver. Yet I would propose to you today that this betrayal didn't happen overnight. I wouldn't even say that it happened over the course of a few weeks, but rather was the result of something deeper that lived inside Judas that prevented him from growing up as an emotionally healthy and spiritual mature adult. Think about it. The very first time we hear from Judas, from Matthew, Mark, and Luke, we're told that he is the one who betrayed Jesus. We also know from Judas's story in the Gospels of the New Testament that he was a capable businessman and controlled the finances, yet was extremely adversarial. In fact, during the time where Jesus was anointed by Mary with an expensive perfume, Judas tersely remarks, "Why wasn't this money sold to help the poor?" Which we know from John that Judas could have cared less about helping the poor because Judas would help himself from the money or the donations that were collected for the ministry of Jesus. Furthermore, we even know that Judas, along with the rest of the disciples, didn't quite understand the death Jesus was to die in order for him to become king. Judas, along with the rest of the disciples, all wanted Jesus to be a political king that would destroy Rome and take back Jerusalem by force. And when it came down to it, Judas couldn't get beyond his own discontentment with a leader that he had followed for 3.5 years. And it's likely that even in some respects, Judas may himself have felt betrayed by Jesus. I mean, we certainly know that Judas didn't betray Jesus for those measly 30 pieces of silver, as he had access to all of the funds that were donated to their ministry. And while I can't offer you exactly what Judas was dealing with, I'd like to propose this to you. Judas's inner self was not fully integrated with his outer self. Therefore, he was emotionally unhealthy. And as a result of the unhealth that existed within, all of his relationships were unhealthy, as clearly indicated by how he lived a lie, constantly stealing from the people he lived in community with. And in a very real sense, Judas lived a double life. Even further, that lack of inner self and outer self integration led to Judas not knowing how to deal with failure or handle failure. He didn't know how to respond in situations where his expectations weren't met. Thus, he opened himself up to the devil and betrayed Jesus over to the authorities, because he was living out of a place where his pain and his trauma and his undeveloped emotions ruled over him. Even after Jesus was arrested, realizing the grave mistake that he had made, Judas made yet another horrible decision, committing suicide. Judas's unhealed inner self led to a life of destruction and ultimately ended in his death. And I'm just wondering how many of you watching out there are like Judas. Your unhealed inner self has led to a life of destruction and betrayal. I'm wondering how many of you watching, like myself, still have areas within that aren't fully healed, that actually prevent you from receiving the love and compassion and kindness and forgiveness that God is offering. If that is you, I want you to know that you are not beyond God's reach. If he offered that love and compassion to Judas 2,000 years ago, he still offers it to you today. The question remains, though, will you receive it? Can you even receive it? Think about this for a few minutes. Ponder this for a few moments. Jesus knew Judas had betrayed him, yet he still washed his feet, showing just how much love Jesus had for Judas. At the Last Supper, Jesus still administered communion to Judas, indicating the forgiveness he was giving to him. And even after that, in the Garden of Gethsemane, where Judas seals the betrayal of Jesus with a kiss, Jesus looks at him and still calls him friend. After all of those compassionate overtures by Jesus to Judas, Judas could not receive the love and the healing that Jesus was offering to him. And it's likely it's because of what was living deep down inside Judas that he didn't know about, what was lurking deep within his soul. Do any of you struggle with conflict, unable to resolve or even work through it? Do any of you find it hard to heal from past wounds? Do you still stuff things down deep inside of you as if you're locking them away in a box never to be heard of again, but you know that you still suffer from them to this day? Do you carry around anger or bitterness that you just can't seem to get over or work through? Do any of you have trouble dealing with failure or a life lived that seems to always end in unmet expectations? If that is you, Jesus offers you healing and forgiveness for all of those things that I just mentioned. And as we close, today marks the beginning of a journey we are taking together as Neighborhood Church, a journey deep into the depths of our own soul. That if you give yourselves to this journey, you can begin to heal and you can begin to receive the love and the kindness and compassion and forgiveness that Jesus has to offer you. The question now becomes for all of us one of vulnerability. Will you allow yourself to be vulnerable and open enough to receive and to take this journey with a community of people together? I pray that you do. I hope that you do. Well, so that concludes our Sunday morning for our Facebook and YouTube viewers. I want to thank you guys all for taking the time to watch this. And I want you all to go in the grace and peace and mercy of Jesus Christ in the rest of your week that you have. Amen.